Hi, everybody. I'm Margie. I work out at the Mendota branch of the Washington County Public Library, and I'm going to talk to you today about seed starting at home. A little bit more detailed than putting a cup of marigolds by your window like you did when you were in elementary school. This will kind of touch on some of the things that seeds need to grow in order to get them into your garden. You have a nice, big, healthy garden this year. So what you're going to need is, first of all, some seed starting soil. You'll need containers with drainage holes. You could get creative with that too. Labels. You'll need your seeds. You'll need a light system too, more than the windows and that you have. Dechlorinated water. Want water without chemicals in it. Um, some other things that you might want to have is a heat mat, and a fan, and also a misting spray bottle. That comes in handy. I use that a lot. So what seeds need to grow is water, light, heat, and oxygen. We're going to touch on all those. Water, light, heat, and oxygen. So you want to get a seed starting soil, and you could just buy them at the store. You'll see them with the seeds next to the seeds. Usually a peat-based mix. They're in bags. Some of them need to be moistened before you use them, so keep an eye on that. Read the label; it'll tell you. And if when you moisten it, use like warm water. Warm water, it helps a lot. It sinks in a lot better than the cold water. Plus, your hands don't get frozen. If you don't want to use peat-based soil, I know there's people don't like using peat moss anymore because it's being depleted. But you can use your garden soil. You can bake it in your oven at home. It's going to stink though, trust me. You got to bake it at 200 degrees Fahrenheit until it reaches 180 degrees with the thermometer in there. And then bake it for 30 minutes at that temperature. And you'll want to add compost and perlite to it to improve drainage so that it's not so compacted. If it's compacted, it could cause some problems with, well, you need the oxygen to get to the plants. They got to have that oxygen. So if it's real compacted, it won't get to it. So add some, add some compost, perlite, vermiculite to it to help with the drainage. And also using soil directly from your garden is not really recommended because there's so many microorganisms and bacteria in it that it could have a detrimental effect on your baby seeds. They got to get strong and grow before they can fight off all this stuff. So keep it clean. I just basically buy peat, like peat-based moss. Yeah, and I mix it up with other stuff so that I'm not using so much peat. But containers, you're going to need containers with drainage holes. You could use egg cartons, milk cartons with holes in the bottom, toilet paper rolls. It's a good way to use up toilet paper rolls. Just, you could cut them in half and tuck the bottom in so that makes a little cup, yogurt cup with holes in it. Newspaper cups are kind of nice. You could plant those right in the ground. Uh, and there's a contraption that you could use that wraps it around it, and you tuck it in and pound it in. It's a little, but you can even make them too if you're good with origami. You could make little newspaper cups for your plants. Margarine tubs are nice, and planting trays. I do kind of a lot of flowers, especially, and I just go ahead and get my planting trays, and I reuse them. I'll show you how to do that. Reuse them at the end too, so kind of be environmentally friendly without that. Plastic wrap is good to have around, and you could use plastic bags, an upside down clear plastic container, or planting tray covers. Some of the planting trays come with a cover automatically that goes on top of it. And I recycle those too. Labels, you're going to need labels. Don't forget the labels. You'll be you'll be glad you don't forget the labels, because a lot of seeds coming up kind of look similar if you're not used to looking at them, and you won't know what they are until they bloom. But anyway, I use old mini blinds that I had. My cats crawl up my my windows and ruin my blinds, so I have a lot of old mini blinds. You can use popsicle sticks, and a silver Sharpie marker works great on the little black planting trays if you're going to go that way. And I just, I just cross mine out, and I have like 3 or 4 lines of stuff on mine from what I do. I just keep reusing them over. Okay, and the seeds, there's perennial seeds, and the perennials usually take 2 or more years to produce flowers or seeds. Um, you might not get flowers out of them the first year. So, but some, if you start them early enough, which is what we're talking about now, if you start them early enough, you might, like cone flowers, for instance. A lot of times you'll get flowers the first year, even though they're perennial. Annuals, which, like alyssum, stuff like that. I have some alyssum right here I wanted to show you. And there's a ton of begonias. Well, around here, they're annuals. You can keep them down in Florida for a lot longer, but up here, they'll freeze. But those, they complete their life cycles in one growing season, and you could save the seeds from some of those too, if it's an heirloom or something that's worth saving your seeds with. Now, when to start seeds? I have a chart here, and it's showing your basic vegetables and some herbs. And what we're going to do, May 10th is, let's see, is May 10th? I should know this. Oh, the last spring frost date for zone 6A is May 15th. That's when I usually plan out. I usually wait until May 15th because I like to give it, where I'm at, this last spring frost date for zone 6B where I live is May 5th, but you still want to let the ground warm up a little bit, but you got there's a little room there, but I wouldn't plan out anything that's frost tender until after May 5th, because you're just asking for trouble that way. You'll have to go and cover them up and keep them warm, and so there's a little bit of room. But the last spring frost date, and you want to know that where your zone is, for zone 6B is May 5th, and for zone 6A is May 15th. That's up in the mountains. So when to start your seeds? You want to look at the seed packet, and on the back of your seed packets, they will tell you when exactly you need to start them. Like this one is very generic. This just says January. So we would want to start planting garlic chives now. Now, peppers, tomatoes, you want to do that 8 to 10 weeks before the last frost. So you're going to take that May 5th date, back it up all the way, 8 weeks. And that includes hardening off. We'll talk about that later too. But 8 weeks before that is when you want to start your planting your seeds. So on this chart here, you'll see peppers and tomatoes. Well, peppers are 6 to 8, and tomatoes 8 to 10. So you'll start your tomatoes February 24th to March 10th, and your peppers from March 10th to March 24th. See how that works? Just back it up a little bit. And let's see, stuff like, I got a lot of flowers. I do a lot of flowers myself, but they'll tell you right on the back. This one says 4 to 6 weeks. This is a phlox, a little tiny phlox. The Shasta Daisies I have here, and these are perennials too. And this one, what does that say? 8 to 10 weeks. So you might get some flowers out of this, starting it nice and early for this year. And then this alyssum that I showed you. So this one's just 3 to 4 weeks. The annuals usually grow quicker. But anyway, this chart here on the screen is going to be available at your branches of the library. So if you want to pick one up to make it easier for you, I did all the hard work, and I wrote down the weeks to sow before transplanting, the day to start plants, and there's germination dates too that takes, when you put them in the ground, how long they take to come up. That's all factored into the 8 to 10 weeks for, say, for tomatoes. Okay, let's move on. So you're going to plant the seeds in your soilless potting mix, or your homemade potting mix if you cook it. Sow the seed in your soil, and I usually put 2 seeds in a pot, and the reason I do that is some of the seeds I use they're a couple years old, and some seeds don't germinate that great. You hardly ever get 100% germination on every single seed. Sometimes you do, but very rarely. So I put 2 in each little hole, and when they come up, you'll take the strongest one and leave that, and just snip off the bottom one to let that strongest one get all that room in the cell pot and everything it needs. If you want to, you could take the other one out and put it in a different hole if you don't want to waste your little plants. I've done that before too. Um, Separate them out, especially if you have low germination rates and you want more flowers. So, and basically to do that, when they get up nice and strong, we'll talk about transplanting here in a minute. When they get up nice and big and have a couple sets of true leaves, you'll get them out with a little spoon or popsicle stick, real gentle, and then replant them. So let's see. And then once you get your little seeds in their little cells, little pots, mist them with water and settle them in, and then cover them to keep them from drying until they germinate. And make sure they're not sitting in water. You don't want water sloshing around in the bottom of your pot. Um, so just it just invites a lot of bacteria and bad stuff, and you could get dampening off with your plants. So aim for like damp, just damp, and then cover them. And then whenever they sprout, go ahead and take that cover off. And that's what I do. And I don't claim to be a perfect, knowing everything about seed starting. We're just kind of having fun. And I've done this for quite a long time. This is what I do. So I just wanted to share it with you. And I have a lighting system. And what it is it's shop lights hung on their chains. And I have 140-watt warm white bulb and 140-watt cool white bulb. And with those two, you get all the spectrums that the plants need to grow. Or you could use grow lights if you have grow lights. I have a rack that I put them on, and it works pretty good. I have 2 shop lights with each of the bulbs on each tray, so it looks like the sun when the plants are on it. But your light should be 2 to 4 inches above the seedlings, so they're pretty close. And I keep the shop lights on a chain and raise it up as the plants grow. Sometimes I have to raise the plant up to meet the things, depending on how long the chains go. So, but ideal about 2 to 4 inches above the seedlings. Now, plants need 16 to 18 hours of light a day, but they need darkness as well. So you got to make sure to give them a break and turn your lights off at night. It gives them a time to stop photosynthesizing, and they could use that stored energy to grow. And a timer works real good for that if you have a timer you could put on. And some seeds need darkness to sprout, but all of them need light when they germinate. So, and your seed packet usually will tell you that. This is my lighting system. I have a metal rack, and I put two on each shelf, 2 of the shop lights on each shelf hung from chains, and you get three levels of seed trays. I could usually fit a couple trays on my shelves the way they're made. Sometimes I do 3 if I do them lengthwise or widthwise in there. I jam them in if they need light. The other one picture here is a plant light. Somebody gave me that one. I just wanted to show you. It's pretty bright too, so it has the spectrum that the plants need to do. It'll fit a tray underneath them. Now water, I let my tap water sit for several hours to get any chlorine out of it, especially if you have city water. You'll probably want to let it sit. And the other thing it does is it gets it to room temperature. If you use real hot or cold water on little baby seeds, they don't like it. It kind of shocks them a little bit. Keep your seedlings moist, but not soaking wet. Strive for consistently damp. And we talked about the fungal diseases. You can get dampening off. It happens quite a bit with real wet seedlings, and sometimes you'll get them and not even know why. It's a fungal disease. but the stems will rot at the bottom and just fall right over. But a good way is to keep them warm, keep your plants warm, and keep them just damp, not wet. And water from the bottom too, that'll help. The roots will get it, and all that, the roots will take that water up. Just water from the bottom, put it in your tray and let the plant soak up the water from the bottom. And seedlings like a humidity of about 50 to 70%. And I miss with a sprayer. My plants are in front of my vent for my heater for the house. And that actually helps, believe it or not, because it blows the air on them. We'll talk about air here in a minute. But it gets a little dry, so I'm always spraying my plants, spraying them. They like it. Heat. Most plants will grow well in a warm room, 70 to 75 degrees, and it's probably a little warmer than what you keep in the house, but they like that, 70, 75 degrees. Now, tomatoes and eggplants, peppers, stuff like that, need a nice warm soil to start out in, and they like it a little bit warmer than the 70, 75. So what you can do is plant them, go ahead and get them in the pots and put them on top of your fridge and let them germinate. And once they germinate, go ahead and put them under the lights. Or you can use a heat mat made for seedlings. It raises the rooting area 10 to 20 degrees above the room temperature. And I use that because I do a lot of seeds. It's my hobby. And this is what my heat mat looks like. So you can just set your trays right on top. It's like a heating pad for little seeds. But it's very helpful. It comes in handy. Now, I talked about my air vent blowing over my seeds, and it does seem to help. It strengthens the stems and everything, and it cuts down on diseases. So you want to get a lot of airflow around. You could use a fan set a couple yards away. Be careful with this, though, so it doesn't dry the plants out. And some people just blow on their plants. Seriously, they'll blow on them and talk to them, and and several times a day. But it sounds weird, but it really works. They need that movement in order, like it is outside, to strengthen and get strong and grow. So give them some airflow. Fertilizing, you can get away with very little fertilizing before you put them out in the garden, but 2 weeks after, if you want to fertilize and make them big and lush and everything. Sometimes I put so many in, I just don't fertilize too much, because the more you fertilize, you get real big plants, and I just don't have room for all of them. So I kind of hold off until they get planted out. But if you want big, fluffy, lovely, lush green plants, 2 weeks after they get their second set of true leaves, fertilize with a quarter to a half strength fertilizer. You could use fish emulsion, diluted manure tea, and then every 2 weeks after that. Now, the first set of true leaves are called cotyledons, or seed leaves, and they look a little different than the true leaves do. But so make sure you have your second set of true leaves. So make sure they're pretty decent before you start fertilizing. Transplanting. When your plants are too big for their container and they have a couple set of the true leaves we just talked about, plant them into bigger pots or cell packs. And use the leaves to transplant with, not the stems. You can crush them very easily. Plant them at the same level as they were in the previous pot. There's a couple exceptions, but that's a general rule. Plant them at the same level in just a bigger pot with dirt around the edges. Oh, and once they get big and nice and healthy, you're going to harden them off. And what I do is 2 weeks before my last frost date, we talked about the frost date earlier. So after May 5th here in Zone 6B and May 15th in Zone 6A, when it's above 50 degrees, don't take your plants out when it's colder than that. They will not like it, and it could even be detrimental to them. So wait until it's above 50 degrees 2 weeks before. If you have to wait longer, wait longer. Start to take them outside a little bit at a time. And this is called hardening off. This gets the plant strong enough to be put into the garden. Gets that airflow on them, gets them nice and strong, and it gets them used to the sunshine so the leaves won't burn. I've had that happen too. Um, to harden them off, take them outside. I'm a little, I baby my plants a little bit too much probably, but I start with a half an hour in sun and bring them back in so they don't get shocked too much. Then the next day I'll go an hour, then 2, then 3, then 4, and then pretty soon they're out all night and they're ready to go in the garden after that, after your last frost date, if they're cold hardy. And if they're not, if they're cold hardy, if they could take some chill like pansies and some other flowers that can take some chill. Cold crops, they can go out a little early too. But your seed packet will tell you. So read that seed packet. And I have a note here about planting out. Once your seedlings have hardened off on a warm, cloudy, windless day, time to transplant them to the garden or pots. And make sure you're meeting your plant's light requirements for them to get off to a good start and to thrive in the garden. And plant them at the same depth as they were in the pots. We talked about that when we transplanted. Tomatoes can be buried, leaving 2 or 3 sets of leaves above the ground. That's an exception. There's a couple other exceptions too, but usually as a general rule, that's plant them at the same depth. And then water them in well when you're done. Give them a good drink. And disinfect your containers to reuse next year. I recycle everything. So if you have a nice seed trays and containers that you want to reuse, soak them in a 10% bleach solution for 10 minutes. So 10%, 10 minutes. And that kills all the bacteria and microorganisms on your trays. And then when I do, I'll wipe them out, get all the dirt out and clean them up and store them for next time. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy starting some seeds and happy planting. And I want you to visit our library. We have a seed saver library at Washington County Public Library in the main branch in Abingdon. There's seeds in there. We're closed now, well, we're open for curbside. So we're going to have to do this curbside pickup for seeds. And we're going to be getting all that together. So they'll be available very soon. And if not already, by the time this gets online. So you could go to wcpl.net or call your local branches and they can help you out there too. The ladies will be glad to help you out with your seeds. So thank you. Have a good day. Bye.